Ladies and gentlemen, opening day is in the books, and with all 15 teams kicking off their seasons on Thursday, we had ourselves a good old-fashioned entertaining day of baseball. You can see some of the happenings on this fancy graphic that Howard made, your top performers on DraftKings yesterday. Also, yes, you could see Aaron Judge as well on the right of said fancy graphic. He picked up where he left off. Ohtani struck out 10 guys, left with a 1-0 lead, so of course the Angels lost to the freaking lowly A's. DeGrom faltered, Fried and Verlander are injured, and Adam Wainwright sings the national anthem and absolutely crushed it. I look forward to purchasing his country album next year.
Can't wait for that. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Jesse Cofield and Emerson Latzia coming at you on this wonderful Friday. So we have NBA Price Check coming up, top plays on the ice and the track. And I'm catching up with Jess Smetana about NCAA basketball. We're talking the women's games coming up this weekend.
That starts tonight. Final Four for the women starts tonight.
Yes, absolutely. And we are talking some F1 too. So
that's right.
Really
she
exciting.
Loves F1.
But first, let's find out who DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne and RotoWire's Eric Halterman are rostering. Guys, only 5 games to choose from today, which feels like a letdown after
yesterday,
every team in action.
What are we doing here, baseball?
Okay, so Garion, pitcher over 8K that you feel like you need in your lineup.
So this is probably slightly a product of the small slate you guys are talking about. They've got to spread out some of the pitching salaries, to make the game work. However, this was like the easiest call in the world for me. I've been so high on Christian Javier the entire offseason. To see him down at $8,200, regardless of the context, you have to jump on that price point. This is someone who might be flirting with 10K every single time he takes the mound the rest of the season under normal circumstances. I mean, he struck out 33.2% of the batters he faced last season. He struck out almost 40% of the right-handed batters he faced last season because his slider is just that good. And when you look at this matchup with the White Sox, obviously they do have some nice bats in the middle of that lineup. They're healthy right now, which is a massive thing for the White Sox as we've talked about the last couple of days. But the thing with the White Sox, they are predominantly right-handed. Most of their best bats, whether it be Tim Anderson or Robert or Eloy Jimenez, or even if you want to go like a tier below and maybe start talking about someone like, Andrew Vaughn. Like, they're right-handed. And I think this is a great matchup for Christian Javier, who, again, I would trust basically regardless of matchup at this point. I think he's almost matchup-proof, but especially if he's hovering around $8,000 with the amount of upside he carries.
All right, Eric, you got 5 guys to choose from who are going to be over 8K. Who's your pick?
Yeah, and I think it's really only 2 guys to choose from. I think Christian Javier is definitely one of them and is probably, I think, the guy who I would say I would take even if the prices are equal. Just to give a second expensive name, Robbie Ray comes in at the top of the board, 1,000 more. But I think he's absolutely a fine play at 9,200 against the Cleveland team that was good enough to make it to the playoffs last year, but they were the weakest offense in the playoffs, and I don't think they're going to be a huge amount better this season. I think they're a perfectly fine matchup for an opposing pitcher, even if it's not an amazing one. When you throw in that park, though, in Seattle, one of the best parks to pitch in, Cleveland failed to score yesterday. I guess the top relievers for Seattle had to go in that game, but they can probably go back-to-back on game 2 if they really want them to. Also, this early in the season, there are a lot of bargains hanging out on the hitting side, which might mean that when you're building your lineup, you just have extra money left over. That was the case for me when I was starting to look at this slate. And so I actually had Javier in there and just replaced him with Ray. Normally, you don't want to go with a guy who you might rank slightly below, who costs 1,000 more. But if you have that extra cash, it might be able to differentiate yourself from some people who are sticking to the cheaper and just as good options.
All right, Easy. So if there's 5 dudes above 8K and there are only 5 games on this slate, that leaves us 5 dudes under 8K. Who would your pick be in this department?
Again, we're deciding between 2. I think Nick Martinez or David Peterson are the 2 options for me. I'm going to take David Peterson as my favorite. He's a little bit cheaper at $6,600. He wasn't necessarily going to start the season in the Mets rotation, but he's now starting game 2. He's, I guess, their 4th starter with Jose Quintana out for a while and Justin Verlander now out for who knows how long, possibly a while as well. Peterson is a guy who does everything except for avoid walks. His walk rate was in double digits, too high for somebody you want to really trust in the entire season as a starter. But if he gets that down, he's already got a high strikeout rate and keeps the ball on the ground well. And he'll be facing a pretty unimpressive Marlins lineup here in a pitcher's park. I think everything lines up for him to be somebody I'd easily pay mid-tier prices for. And instead, he's almost the cheapest guy on the slate.
Gary, and what's the move here on the mound under $8,000?
I think it does have to be Peterson number 1 for a lot of the reasons that we just heard. I think that the interesting thing with Peterson, when you look back at his 2022 statistics, oftentimes when a guy splits his time between the rotation and the bullpen and posts a K per 9 above 10, you can kind of expect that he did a lot of that damage as a reliever, kind of pitching full throttle for an inning, 2-inning long period of time. That wasn't the case with Peterson. He actually had a 10.9 K per 9, a 27.8% strikeout rate as a starter last season. So you know he can do that and has that high upside that he brings to the table, even when he's starting games, not necessarily coming out of the bullpen. So that's really nice. I would also add just Jesus Luzardo to the mix. Obviously, it might be the toughest matchup of the day, but that could mean some differentiation when it comes to ownership. Luzardo, really for him, he's someone who in redraft formats you're a little afraid of just because he's been unable to stay on the field for the entirety of a full season. It's kind of shocking that he's even been in the majors for 4 or 5 years at this point, considering how sporadically he pitches. But in daily fantasy, he's healthy right now, and he has the potential to strike out 10 guys any night he takes the mound. Pitching in a fantastic pitcher's park in Miami. It's the Mets. That's tough, but I think Luzardo could be a really, really nice value below 8K.
All right, Gary, talk to me about an infielder over 4,500 on such a small slate. Do you kind of have to get cute and differentiate yourself here?
I don't know how cute you have to get. I think like Eric was saying, there's so much savings on this slate for guys who are either just mispriced or some of the pitchers we were already talking about that I think you can put a couple big name bats into your lineup. I think the first guy I'd be looking to get in there is Freddie Freeman. Just a fantastic left-handed bat, one of the best left-handed bats we have in all of baseball. Maybe doesn't bring some of the power upside that other guys bring, but just maybe the best hitter in baseball. And he's going up against Merrill Kelly, who was really good last season for the Diamondbacks. I mean, I think he slots in as a really nice third option in most rotations. But if Kelly did have an Achilles heel last season, it was pitching to left-handed bats in particular. Gave up way more home runs, 1.23 per 9 within the split. Also had a 4.61 FIP within the split because his strikeout rate was much lower against left-handed bats. His walk rate was much higher against left-handed bats. He just tends to struggle against lefties. So I think Freeman could be in a really nice spot. I'd also give a look to Manny Machado, just an opposite hand matchup going up against Kyle Freeland. That game's in San Diego, not Colorado, but Machado is at a reasonable price as well, considering he has the hand disadvantage tonight.
All right, Eric, it looked like you liked that Freddie Freeman play. Do you agree you can, put a lot of these big names into your lineup?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a build where you go with multiple of the cheap pitchers. As much as we talked about some of the expensive starters we liked, I think you could go with, say, Jesus Luzardo or David Peterson. Probably don't want to do them both since they're facing each other, but one of them alongside Nick Martinez, and suddenly you have room for a lot of hitting talent. I think Freddie Freeman as part of a stack of expensive Dodgers batters, I think you could certainly fit in today if you go that route with your pitching staff. Another expensive stack would be the Padres. Gary touched on Manny Machado. You could pair him with Xander Bogaerts for 4,800. Get a couple righties against the left-handed Kyle Freeland. I think the Padres bat should be very popular today. You could even include them alongside Juan Soto, who won't get the platoon advantage on the theory that Padres might just knock out Kyle Freeland in the third inning here. So you want all their biggest bats. So I think there's a lot of room to play with one or two more of the best bats in the league than you normally have in your lineup because, again, these early season slates, you'll get more guys who just come cheaper than they will for most of the season.
All right, E. Let's go to an outfielder under $4,000. Look at Benny Biceps right there, chilling at $3,900 for the White Sox.
Yeah, there's some interesting plays in that range, but the ones that I can't turn down are all three Arizona left-handed outfielders that
Okay.
are Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, Jake McCarthy. That trio of young lefties is sort of the key to Arizona's season in a way. If the team is going to suddenly become competitive a year before everybody expects, it's because those young guys, they're really here and they're good. Carroll is the one who's on another level of stardom. He's the one who could be a superstar, could be pushing 5,500 by midseason in some of these DraftKings slates easily. Right now, you can get him for 3,100. But I'd be interested in pairing him with a few more Arizona hitters, particularly the lefties today.
All right, Gary, and who you want under 4K in the outfield?
I think Eric makes a great call with the Diamondbacks.
Wow.
I'm going to stick with some more young outfielders. This guy had a massive spring training. Maybe he's finally broken out. Maybe he hasn't. Did steal a base on opening day. That's nice. Jared Kelenic at $2,700. That salary might even be high, considering what he's done at the major league level. However, Jared Kelenic is an elite AAA hitter. Thankfully, he gets to face a AAA pitcher tonight in Hunter Gaddis, who is having to make this start because Tristan McKenzie is on the 15-day IL with the exact same ailment as Justin Verlander, strangely enough. Gaddis, perfectly fine at AAA, and I don't want to read too much into literally 7 1/3 innings of data at the major league level. However, when you give up 7 home runs and 9 barrels in those 7 1/3 innings, it's a red flag. And I think it speaks to something that we were also seeing in his minor league data, which is he is an extreme fly ball pitcher. Like, his ground ball rate at the major league level last season was 18%. He gives up a lot of batted ball in the air, which is a dangerous way to live, even when you're getting to pitch at a very spacious field in Seattle. I think there's a very good chance that Kelenic or several other Mariners tonight could possibly hit a home run. But obviously, with his $2,700 price tag, I think Kelnic's a really, really, really nice value play.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, dudes.
Enjoy your weekends. Coming up, Jess Smetana going to join the show. We are going to talk about this must-watch game between Iowa and South Carolina on the women's side. NCAA Final Four madness. But first, let's get one last preview of the men's games on Saturday with Julian and VSiN's Pauly Howard from Unreasonable Odds. Take a look.
So if that three-point defense can limit FAU, that's the one thing that I have my eye on in this game that can turn it one way, and that would be towards the Aztecs. I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, but if I do by Saturday, that'll be the side. Your thoughts on this game, Pauly?
Yeah, I'm with you. I went back and forth on what's the better play, if it's the Aztecs or the under. But I land on San Diego State because of the defense, and as you mentioned, how they guard the three. It's just the Creighton percentage, what they did against Bama. Furman was 6 of 26. Charleston was 5 of 24. And then you go back and look at the 4 teams they played in the tournament. Charleston averaged 80 a game. San Diego State held them to 57. Furman averaged 80 a game. They held them to 52. Bama, 81 a game. Held them to 64. Creighton, 76 a game. Held them to 56. And this might be a reach, but I like what Jay Wright said after the game about, they asked him what happens now, meaning you go to the Final Four, and he said you keep the players as far away from the student body as possible because everyone wants a piece of them, and now they're this great run, and now they're rock stars. So I think there's more to do in San Diego as opposed to Del Boca Vista. So what Florida Atlantic has to deal with as well. So I would go with the Aztecs from that standpoint as well. But I just think they're going to find a way to win a low-scoring game and get it done here. And great story with the Owls. But you cannot ignore the success of Conference USA, that they are 17-1 straight up in all these tournaments. They won the CBI. They're going to win the NIT, and now they got a team in the Final Four. Can we please get them an at-large bid one of these years? It's crazy. But I'm going to wind up on the Aztecs just because you mentioned at the top and what they do defensively and how they guard the three. I think will be too much for Florida Atlantic. And at times, while it's a great story, Florida Atlantic, you saw it against Kansas State. They're too reckless and careless with the ball. And if they turn it over too much, I also think the Aztecs will can maybe win comfortably.
Yeah, not to diminish any of FAU's wins because what they've done has been extremely impressive, but San Diego State has certainly taken down the better opponents between the two so far in the tournament. So they've kind of stepped it up a weight class. I will say, speaking to the under, I did play the first half under in this one. I played it at under 61.5.
Yes.
Anything in that 60.5 to 61.5 neighborhood. I played the San Diego State first half under against Bama. I played it against Creighton. I thought I was going to lose it against Creighton because Creighton out of the gates was looking like they were on their normal 80-point pace, and then it just completely halted. San Diego State did what they do. So I think you look at FAU, they kind of got caught up in that pace with Tennessee. That first half played right out to Tennessee. It was 27-22 at half before FAU broke away in the second half. So I'm using the first half under as a play here in this game. It's a 2-point spread, so overtime is always possible. I don't want to deal with the full game. I don't want to deal with FAU kind of ramping up the pace. I don't want to deal with late free throws. But first half under for me on this one, I'm down with.
Welcome into the show, Jessica Smetana. You know her from Golic and Smetty and the Levitard Show. She's a woman of many talents. Also hosts a podcast at Meadowlark about F1 racing. DNF with her co-host Spencer Hall. Jess, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right,
what a setup you have. I love it.
Oh my God. I mean, I just got to praise you and your many talents.
I'm in a closet right now.
I would have no idea because you look amazing and your setup looks amazing, even though you're in a closet. Wow.
Yep, here we are.
Color me impressed. All right, let's start on the track here. So get into F1. Max Verstappen, he won the first race of the year, and if it wasn't his Red Bull teammate Sergio Perez in front of him last week, he probably could have overcome his 15th start position to win again. Is anything going to stop this dude this year? Maybe just his own car? What do you think?
Yeah, well, he had some issues with his car in the race last weekend in Saudi Arabia, but it appears that Red Bull has the fastest car again for the second, probably third season in a row. And he is the best driver on the grid. He's won 2 championships. It doesn't seem like there's much that is going to get in his way this season. And sometimes that's just how Formula One goes. There's stretches where there's dominance from different teams, and then there will be a new, change in rules or regulations, or someone will retire or whatever, and it'll go to another team. So it's not an unprecedented situation that it looks like he's head and shoulders above the rest of the field, only 2 races in, but I would be surprised if anyone did stop him. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, so you kind of got into it, but Red Bull dominated last year. They've taken the top 2 spots in the first 2 races again. Can other teams make changes to be better this year and compete?
Absolutely. So throughout the season, Formula One teams generally will upgrade their cars. They will see what works and what doesn't work over the span of a few races and make changes and improve. And generally you see sometimes the gap will narrow. That's not to say that any one car will have an upgrade package, then it'll automatically be better than the Red Bull car, because the Red Bull car has started so far ahead pace-wise from the other cars, and they have a concept that clearly is working with the regulation set that was instituted at the beginning of last season. So yes, I think you may see the gap close if teams think that they can still compete this year. I think you also have some teams that may decide, well, we don't have it this year. We'll still race hard, but we're going to put a lot of our eggs in the car, in the basket for next year's car. So that's kind of a philosophical thing. But I do expect there to be some exciting races, even if the first 2 of the season have been pretty, Red Bull heavy at the top of the grid.
Yeah, I mean, Aston Martin's been pretty good early on. Fernando Alonso making the podium. How impressive has he been this year at 41? I mean, Lewis Hamilton's probably the better Tom Brady comparison, but making the podium in your 40s can't be easy.
Oh, I'm sure it's not. It's something that I think a lot of fans take for granted, because Fernando Alonso he was such a phenomenal racer early on in his career. And Lewis Hamilton, I think the Tom Brady comparison is funny because Lewis Hamilton had this stretch where he was winning every single year. And so I don't even think people take his age into account, because he's been good for his entire career, much in the way Tom Brady is yeah, he's 45, but who cares? he's still going to win. He still can win a Super Bowl. But for Fernando Alonso, it is interesting to see because he was on a team last year that it was not anywhere near the top of the pack. And now, kind of seemingly out of nowhere, the new team that he's on has a really fast car. So he has been able to be on the podium for the first 2 races. And it's fun to see. It seems like fans are really excited to see him back in the front of the pack again, after somewhat of a lull in his late 30s with Alpine teams. So yeah, it's fun to see, and I'm sure it's not easy either.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. I'm 32 and I'm like, geez, I need to like take a little break after, lay down. My back hurts. Well, Hamilton's team, Mercedes, they've been struggling this year. So has Ferrari. Like, what is going on with these cars, with these teams?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And you could ask someone who has way more technical knowledge than me, and they would give you a super technical answer. So I'll kind of just break it down in the easiest way to understand, because F1 and the cars, it is all super, engineering, science, math. And I don't know if everyday fans even can, especially me, can even like understand fully what is going on, why the cars aren't as fast. But I think the thing to know is that Mercedes specifically, like I mentioned earlier, there was a change in the regulations at the beginning of last year's season, and the Mercedes car, which was really good in 2021, they had to completely change like the different specs on the car. So they didn't do as good of a job as they hoped in creating a car that was competitive with the Red Bull and that would be the fastest car. And they're still trying to regroup from that. So it's possible that they'll continue to make improvements on this car and the current model that they have, and it will get faster. But they've had some major issues. They've had a lot of issues with something called porpoising last year, which is where the floor of the car is so low that it's causing the car to like bounce up and down while they're driving, and it was jostling the drivers around, and it looked really unsafe and scary. And so they've had to make adjustments on that. And so they've just had a lot of issues. They didn't nail the concept after the regulation set, and so this is the result of that. And that being said, they're still really fast. They're just not top 2 right now, which is an unusual place for Ferrari, or for Mercedes, excuse me.
Yeah, so due to the porpoising, the math is just not mathing. The math is not
right.
mathing.
I mean, Formula One is funny because I didn't really watch a ton of it until a few years ago because I was overwhelmed with the amount of engineering, and I majored in television in college, so engineering is not something I have any sort of background in.
Yep, me neither.
But you can understand it without needing to know. I think, and probably very diehard Formula One fans would disagree, any sort of like physics lessons or anything like that. Car doesn't go fast. Car should go fast.
Yeah.
Why isn't car going fast? They need to fix it so it goes faster.
Honestly, that I'm picking up what you're putting down. That makes sense to me, okay? So F1 hitting Australia this week. Verstappen, big favorite to win. Perez favorite to hit the podium as well, which is kind of surprising because Red Bull hasn't won in Melbourne since 2011. Verstappen has only gotten on the podium once in Australia in 2019. So are you maybe looking at a bet for one of these other guys, or is like Red Bull's form so strong right now?
I wouldn't bet against Max Verstappen in any race this season. I mean, there's always a chance that something could happen with car malfunctioning. You could get a DNF unexpectedly. But after last weekend, when you saw him, he started in 15th because his car basically crapped out during qualifying, and he was able to overcome 14 or 13 places to finish in second behind his teammate, like you mentioned earlier. So it's really hard to imagine, like, even if barring something catastrophic, he's so much faster. So maybe a Ferrari can squeeze in there. Maybe you can get a Charles Leclerc up there, but he's had reliability issues with his car as well. The Mercedes are fast, but they're not as fast. So I don't think anyone is really anticipating anything other than Verstappen being at the top of the pack again.
All right, well, F1 obviously not the only thing going down this weekend. March Madness, we are down to the Final Four for the men and the women. Best player on the planet right now, Iowa's Caitlin Clark. I mean, how impressive has she been on the Hawkeyes Final Four run? And going up against South Carolina here, like SC's huge favorites all year. Any shot Clark and Iowa can pull off the upset?
Look, I think there's a shot, certainly, but South Carolina, it's weird to say that a team on like a 40-game win streak is not getting credit because they've blown out everyone they've played in this tournament. And they are so good, and they have great defense. They have great offense. They have a Hall of Fame coach. They have the National Player of the Year from last year, Aaliyah Boston. Trying to win a back-to-back championship, which is always hard. Only 9 other teams have done it in women's basketball. So, do I think there is a chance for an upset? Of course. Caitlin Clark is incredible. She was the first player in NCAA tournament history to record a 40-point triple-double this weekend against Louisville. And she's also the first player in D1 history to record more than 900 points and 300 assists in the same season. Like, she is an incredible shooter. She's fun to watch. I think this game's, I think, going to break ratings records for the Final Four. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch it, and I still expect South Carolina to win.
All right, so, I mean, tons of brackets being busted, upsets on both sides in the men's and the women's tournaments. Like, how has this year's March Madness ranked in some of the greatest tournaments of all time?
It's been really fun. Like, I get frustrated when people are like, oh my God, like 2 1-seeds lost in the first weekend. This is the best tournament ever. Because there's been so many great NCAA tournament games, especially in the women's side, that I think have been overlooked in that conversation. But I will say, it has been watching UConn's 14-season Final Four streak end this year, Indiana and Stanford going out. It's been a really, really fun one to watch. I do think, South Carolina still being in it and having the chance to repeat, they are such a strong favorite, especially if you look at the odds on DraftKings. But it's been really fun to watch. I don't know what else to say. I think it's funny that, when you see the bracket get busted on the women's side a little bit with the 2 1-seeds going out early, it's like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then when you see it on the men's side, everyone's like, this is the worst Final Four ever. Who cares about FAU? I like both. I think both are fun. I love seeing new teams play in the Final Four and in the national championship. For me, I will watch an underdog play, even if maybe they're not the best team in the country, whatever. They made it this far. I like when new teams get to win and get to play. I always root for the underdogs.
Yeah, fresh blood. We love it. All right, Jess, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me.
Here on the starting 5, Swaggy P. A question I always wanted to ask you, I think we always wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
What was your experience like playing with the Mamba?
Oh man, for me, I grew up Laker fan, Kobe fan, had the afro and all that. So, and once I signed with the Lakers, he was like the first person to hit me up. You show your friends like, look, I got Kobe in my phone. Look how many people could call Kobe, but the first thing he told me to do was just meet him at his gym, man, in Orange County at 6 in the morning. So I get there. He there first to see who's gonna be late. He got his shades on. The sun ain't came up yet. It's still, he got his shades on, sitting in his car waiting for people to come, see who's gonna be first, who's gonna be late. We get in the gym, he walk in, shades on in the gym, cool as walk. I'm like, man, I'm really about to practice a Kobe, right? And next thing you know, he was in that gym for like 5 or 6 hours. We didn't leave until we threw up or passed out. So it was crazy. Yeah.
That's what.
Were you on time?
I was on time. I made sure. But my homie was talking. He was like, you worry about that later. You got practice to do. I said, damn, boy, don't say another word in here.
Wow. It said 6 hours.
It was 6 hours of cold.
So you threw up.
Yeah, because he go over the same things like,
Repetitive.
yeah, just over and over. Then once you do that, you learn the second move to it. Then you learn the third move to it. So it was like, it was a learning experience for me, for real.
Wow.
DraftKings presents Starting 5 live from the compound.
All right, welcome back to The Sweat. Jesse and Emerson here, and it is time to talk some basketball. We have a huge 13-game slate. Only 2 teams on the second night of a back-to-back, Celtics and Nuggets. So do we avoid the stars on those teams? I don't know. Let's ask DraftKings contributors Nick Fryer and Jeff Pratt.
Look at Jeff, how happy he is after what the Celtics did to the Bucks last night. Good for you, Pratt. I'm happy when you're happy. Let's get to tonight, though, young man. Give me a guard over 8K who you're trying to pay up for.
Thank you for saying that, first of all, Emerson. I am quite happy today. And as for a guard,
over AK, I would really like to pay up for Steph Curry tonight because he's coming off a ridiculous game and he's playing the Spurs. The problem is he's playing the Spurs, so you can't really count on him to be in this game past the midway point of the third quarter. Pretty much everyone is blowing out San Antonio at this point. So I look at the rest of the guards priced above 8K on today's slate, and to be honest, I don't particularly love any of them. I will say that if Kawhi Leonard is out due to personal reasons like last game, I think Russ becomes an obvious play at 8,700. But if Kawhi plays, you have to look elsewhere. I think you can make a case for Ja with a good matchup there. Josh Giddey is playing the Pacers, who are giving up a ridiculous amount of points lately. I think either of those guys make sense. But in reality, Curry will be the guy I would pay up for. Outside of him, if Kawhi plays, I'm probably not paying all the way up for a guard tonight. I know it's kind of a bummer, but
it is. It is kind of a bummer because you kind of didn't really answer the question.
I know. I feel bad for deflecting, but it is what it is.
Yep. This is a terrible segment already, and it's all your fault. Nick, talk to me here, dude. I saw you nodding in agreement, though.
I think that Jeff makes a good point about Giddey, but I also think, Jeff, you're right to not let Emerson put you in a box because he likes to do this to us sometimes, and I'm not going to let him do it to me. I'm going to go with a guy who's slightly below 8K, but a guy who is going to who should give you a ton of production. He's been doing it lately, Mikal Bridges, 7.8K going up against the Hawks. I think there are a couple guys in this general range tonight, like right near 8K, that are worth rostering, both at guard, and there's another guy at forward who I'll touch on later. But Mikal Bridges, 41.5 DK fantasy points plus in the Brooklyn's last 4 games, 39 plus DK fantasy points in the 2 meetings versus the Hawks this season. He got 43 the last time you saw him, which was his first game with facing the Hawks as a member of the Nets. You look at the Hawks, 3rd in pace over the last 10 games, 25th in defensive rating over the last 10 games. Shooting guards have had their way with the Hawks throughout much of the season. Another guy, too, who's right there, right next to 8K, too, Shaedon Sharpe going up against the Kings tonight, but I think Bridges is my favorite guard.
Okay, so you don't want to pay up for a guard. We got that. So, Jeff, what about a guy under 5,500? Do you have a good pick here that you like?
Yeah, I actually have a pick for this one, thankfully. And I didn't really expect to be talking about Corey Joseph in 2023, but here we are, and he's a great value play tonight. It's a good idea to roster pretty much anyone playing against the Houston Rockets, but especially guards, as they give up the most fantasy points in the league to opposing backcourts. And I don't blame you if you aren't watching the Pistons consistently right now. They're in full tank mode and playing ugly basketball. But as a result, Corey Joseph is seeing regular minutes, and the production has been there as well. He's racked up 21 plus fantasy points in 9 of his last 11 games. That type of consistency is all you can ask for from a 5K player. So I would roll with him tonight.
All right. So finally we got a pick, like it feels good for you that you guys are following.
I was going to say, I'm not appreciating the energy coming from you guys.
We're just,
right
you know what?
I gave you 2.
All right.
I
yeah,
love
but you
that about you,
cheated.
Nick.
You cheated.
You did cheat.
Yeah, you cheated. All right.
See,
Nick,
at least I
else
stuck
I
within
heard
the
like that.
boundaries. I might not have had a pick, but.
All right, Nick, can we get a
Did
guard?
you just throw me under the bus after I...
I'm sorry. You're right.
Nick, can we get a guard under 5,500? That means below the number 5500.
Okay, I think I can do this. So Jeff brought up Steph Curry, how you'd like to play him tonight. I agree, you can't go and trust him in this spot against the Spurs. But a guy I think you can trust against the Spurs is Dante DiVincenzo at 4K. Of course, Spurs, 2nd in pace over the last 10 games, 24th in defensive rating during that span. We know who the Spurs are. Obviously, blowout spot makes it a little bit concerning with those high price guys. But with DiVincenzo coming off, 25.75 DK fantasy points, that'll work for us tonight at this price tag, but I think you look at his ceiling, it's significantly higher because we're worried about those minutes with this being a potential blowout spot. And the last time that the Warriors saw the Spurs, DiVincenzo dropped over 40 DK fantasy points.
Nick, we're going back up the board right now here, homie. A forward north of $8,000 who you like this evening.
Yeah, I think I can go with this one. I got a guy at 8.2K, so right up against it, going against the Hornets, DeMar DeRozan, depleted price tag against a team that's 5th highest in pace in the league, 11th worst in defensive rating in the league. And on top of that, they struggle defending opposing wings. Outside of that ugly loss against Philly recently, DeRozan has scored at least 41 DK fantasy points in 10 of the last 11, going over 50 DK fantasy points twice. So I like him a lot tonight. And another guy worth considering too, again, just below 8K range is Jalen Williams going up against the Pacers. Anytime SGA is not in the mix, I like him on my roster.
All right, Jeff, what do you want to do here, homie? Did he freeze?
Oh my.
Or was my question that good?
no.
And he's like, I don't have a forward north of $8,000.
No,
he
he
is.
Looks good, Frozen.
Yeah,
It's
he's-
true. We've
he's
had
frozen.
worse screen freezes.
All right.
Frozen.
Well, Nick, we'll just go back to you.
Was I lost? Am I back now?
You're back.
You were
wow.
you were frozen, dude. So
We're about to move on,
Not
but
quite
now
sure
you're
if you
back.
heard what I was asking.
You tried to skip me. I see what it is.
We didn't try to skip you.
I'm
You
just-
literally
I'm
were
just hearing
frozen.
excuses.
Just give me a forward over $8,000 right now. Jeff.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not paying all the way up for a forward, but I do have someone over 8K that I like, and that guy is Kevin Durant. I think if we've learned anything from KD over the course of his entire career, is that he does not string together many stretches of bad games. And make no mistake about it, he was bad on Wednesday in his home debut for the Phoenix Suns. He shot 5 for 18, only had 32 fantasy points. It was really ugly. That being said, he's priced at just 9K tonight. Phoenix is playing the Nuggets, so we're likely not in blowout territory. And you know the Suns are going to make a concerted effort to get him going. Now, obviously, if Nikola Jokic doesn't suit up tonight, there might be some concern there, but I still think Denver can keep it close enough to force KD to play 28 to 35 minutes. And at the end of the day, we're talking about Kevin Durant here. I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't bounce back in a big way.
All right, back down the board we go. Jeff, we're going to stick with you so you don't freeze again. Give me a forward under 5,500 that you like.
Oh, man, all kinds of issues today. The last time I said to pay up for Aaron Nesmith, he burned me, but I'm giving him another chance tonight. I've watched enough of Nesmith over his time with the Celtics and his expanded role with the Indiana Pacers to think we have a solid grasp on his game. And the main takeaway is he is incredibly streaky. If he's cold, you pretty much can't have him on the floor because he's going to actively hurt your team. But when he's hot, he's a strong starting caliber NBA player. He's coming off a huge 39 fantasy point outing in which he racked up 22 points, 3 assists, shot a perfect 5 for 5 from behind the arc. Tonight, he and the Pacers get OKC, which is a great matchup. The Thunder allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wings. So hopefully Nesmith can extend this hot streak. I'm giving him another chance.
All right, Nick, where are we going?
I'm going to go with one of those two teams that's on the second leg of a back-to-back for my forward under 5.5K. Grant Williams, 4.5K, going up against the Jazz. Look, obviously they beat the tar out of the Bucks last night. Emerson alluded to it earlier. But I do question whether or not we're going to see Al Horford or Time Lord tonight. Of course, if both of those guys are playing, Grant Williams not as trustworthy of a play tonight. Still could be rostered, though, because if you look at the last few games, he's been right around 5x value. But when Al Horford has been off the floor, the last 7 times that has happened, Grant Williams has provided 5 times value. Last time, dropping 34 DK fantasy points against the same Jazz team.
All right, dudes, let's go to the big men in the middle. A center under $6,000, Nick, who you are going to stuff in your lineup tonight.
Yeah, I can just sneak him in, too, at 5.9K. Xavier Tillman going up against the Clippers. I know these two teams just saw each other, but Tillman cooked him last time, and honestly, he's been doing really well. The Clippers don't do really all that great against opposing centers, so I like him in this spot. He's got at least 34 DK fantasy points in each of Memphis' last 4 games. I know that Jaren Jackson Jr. is back tonight, but Tillman had 2 of those strong performances with Jackson Jr. in the mix. The big thing for him has been the increase in minutes. He's got 31-plus minutes in each of those last 3 games. Again, Jackson played in 2 of those games. So as long as he gets that tonight, he should be able to provide pretty good value.
Jeff, center under $6K for tonight, please.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that I can't choose an expensive center here because that's probably the one position I would want to pay all the way up for between Jokic, Embiid, or Anthony Davis. But luckily, there are some consistent, dependable centers in the sub 6K range. So we have some options to choose from. And I'm going to pivot to a Celtics player. We made it the whole show without talking about one on my end. So I'm going to sneak one in here. It's going to be Rob Williams. Al Horford hasn't played on the second night of a back-to-back all year. I'd be pretty shocked if he suits up against Utah tonight, despite the injury report on Boston's end not coming out just yet. So assuming he sits and Rob Williams plays, which is no guarantee given his injury history, I would roll with Rob. at 4,400. He's coming off one of the best games of the season, just off the eye test. He and Al Horford made Giannis miserable last night. They forced him to pivot to an entirely perimeter focused offensive game. It was pretty fascinating to watch Joe Mazzulla's defensive system set up against Giannis and the Bucks. Rob finished with just under 27 fantasy points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 blocks. He just did everything. It was a classic Rob Williams performance. Utah is a great DFS matchup for opposing centers. That's who the Celtics get tonight. So as long as he plays, he should keep it rolling.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you, ballers. And speaking of ballers, Jeff and Pierce are about to give us their picks, not you, for the NASCAR Toyota Owners 400.
Yo, DraftKings, y'all got the most ways to bet on NBA players. I'm hyped. Hitting props, that's my dog. Stack up buckets, blocks, and boards on my boy, or superstar going one-on-one against another superstar. Oh, it's on. And all these bets are on my man's dedicated page? Now you spoiling me, DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and bet $5 to win $150 in bonus bets on your team to win. Action's so good, why bet anywhere else? That's my move. He used my move.
You know, betting without a game plan is a little like skating a giant ramp without helmet and pads. I wouldn't risk it. And I wouldn't bet without a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook provides you with tools to set a realistic budget and time limits, so you're ready to bet responsibly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps to learn more about how you can practice safe bets.
This season, DraftKings Sportsbook is your place to bet on the greatest sport on ice. There's so many ways to get closer to the game. And with this latest offer, you can win big. Now that is deserving of some victory stick taps.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up with the promo code, and take advantage of this great offer.
And get in on the action with an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
With DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports, you can play for millions with a lineup full of big NBA stars. Maybe you throw in a three-point specialist that's been around the league, seen a thing or two. You know, if you want. Download DraftKings and play for your share of millions. Action's so good, why play NBA anywhere else?
Tyler Reddick last week was the most dominant car all week, and he proved to everyone once again it wasn't just a fast car last season. It's going to be a force on road courses going forward, which, by the way, we're back on the East Coast this week. Richmond, known for its high speeds, its tire wear. Pierce, Dietrich, the track is D-shaped, I'm told, under a mile. Jeff Ulrich, you are also here because we are going to dive into the NASCAR Toyota Owners 400.
Yeah,
at
and
Richmond.
As we were seeing the winners in the last 5 years, like a lot of the same names.
Yeah.
So short track history could be a factor here.
Like,
good to keep in mind.
Joe Gibbs Racing, right? They've been pretty good here, Pierce.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. Now, and before we get started, let's make sure that we acknowledge that Jeff was on Tyler Reddick last week. Yeah, it was a little rough,
Thank you.
But he said play Tyler Reddick. He talked about how he's been playing Tyler Reddick a lot over the last season. So let's give Jeff some credit. He nailed that one.
Wow.
Okay.
Glad someone was listening.
This is beautiful. I was listening. I just forgot, dude.
Teamwork makes the dream work. All right, guys. 2 weeks ago was a super speedway. Joey Logano wins. Last week, road course. Like we said, Tyler Reddick wins. This week, we're on the Richmond short track. So drivers need to adjust, right? So who's a good top-priced DFS play in this one, Pierce?
Yeah, there's a significant change this week, going from the plate races to the road courses, now back to a short track. And the short tracks are using a new low downforce package this season. So we can go back to the first time that package was unveiled at Phoenix. So if you want to look at some of the Phoenix data, I think that's a good, strong point. Also look at last year's Richmond races. Those will help you narrow down the field. And you look at last fall, who won at Richmond? It was Kevin Harvick, who nearly won at Phoenix. And the only reason he didn't win was because of a late race caution, was Kevin Harvick. So he's going to come in really fast. Emerson, as you mentioned, JGR has been strong at Richmond in the past. Christopher Bell is one of the best short track racers. He should be on his way. He almost beat Kevin Harvick last fall at Richmond. You go back to the spring race, Martin Truex Jr. was one of the best cars, just got the stage caution breaks the wrong way. Denny Hamlin did win that race, so JGR's on the board. And then also Hal Larson and William Byron have been the fastest cars this season. William Byron's got the wins. Larson has nothing to show for it. He's due, but he's been very unlucky. Those are the drivers that I would be honing in on.
All right, Jeff, which drivers are you honing in on?
Yeah, I mean, for DFS, I feel like Harvick is probably going to be the highest owned up here just because of his history and everything Pierce just laid out. I think Kyle Larson is probably the sort of pivot option. It feels like he, probably coming in with the most negative sentiment. The driver I like, though, building around for sure is Chris Bell. You just look at his progression. He's had a really good season so far, some top tens already. And then Bell also, I mean, Pierce alluded to this, but like he's just a really good short track racer. I mean, multiple top tens. We have like the three kind of race stretch, Richmond, Martinsville, Bristol. I mean, this is kind of like his bread and butter. He's got top tens, like really top finishes at all these races. I don't have any reason to necessarily think that this wouldn't be a spot where he kind of breaks through. So I think Chris Bell is a very solid target this week. Like I said, there should be some concentrated ownership up top though, but I definitely, probably a good spot to get on Larson, but Chris Bell just probably favorite overall pick.
All right, Jeff, how about some value drivers here on the DFS side? Pierce in his rankings actually has one dude below $7,500 in his top 10.
Wow. I actually didn't read Pierce's rankings this week. Usually I do.
Wow.
And then I just copy all his work. That's how I got through school as well. But didn't do that this week. I like Eric Jones at 6,600. I don't know if this was the driver that Pierce was alluding to, but it could have been. He's driven okay. He's got 8th in his last start. Eric Jones, you just go and look at his history. Eric Jones pops up at these short track races. He's got a nice history, not only at Richmond this week, but at other stops like Bristol. 6,600. Actually was pretty surprised to see his price down there. And I mean, again, we've got other drivers that you can look down to. We always bring up, guys in the 5K range. Certainly wouldn't hate like Noah Gragson this week at 5,800, but I think Eric Jones brings you like the best combo of just upside and pure value under 7K this week.
Pierce, no Eric Jones in your top 15 in your article this week.
No, he's fine. Eric Jones has been running well this season. I think some other guys have a little bit more upside. Spend a little bit more on Josh Berry, who is subbing in for Chase Elliott. We know the number 9 is a championship caliber car. Hendrick Motorsports, we talked about Larson and Byron, how fast they've been. Berry's going to have that speed. He's a late model champion, so he's very familiar with short track racing. Although he hasn't raced a lot at Richmond, in his first race at Richmond in the Xfinity Series, he was really strong last season. Subbing for Elliott a couple weeks ago in Phoenix, he got a top 10 finish. That's pretty impressive. I believe he'll be capable of doing that again. And then also, I've got my eye on Austin Cindric and Michael McDowell. After a road race, they are great road racers, so DraftKings always has to bump their price down. I think they overcorrected a little bit too much. And Austin Cindric and Michael McDowell are too cheap. Austin Cindric was in the optimal lineup at Richmond last fall. And typically people just don't believe or buy into Michael McDowell because he's on a small team, but he has been really good over the last couple seasons.
All right, let's take this party over to the sports book. So Pierce, any driver like plus 3,500 or longer odds that you might throw a sprinkle on? You got a long shot you like?
No, I don't. I love taking long shots, and there are weeks for it at plate races, at road courses possibly, even at the intermediate tracks where the cars are all pretty even. But this is just not the case. In this new package, at the short tracks, the cream is going to rise to the top. There's going to be a big separation. There's going to be a disparity between the haves and have-nots. You would really need a lot of chaos to open the door for a long shot. Alex Bowman at 1,800 is as deep as I would go. There's a couple guys in that range, but even with taking an Alex Bowman, who did win in 2021 at Richmond, he needed a late race caution. So you're going to need some cautions and some breaks, and that's not necessarily the way that Richmond runs. This is a green flag, lap-turning affair, and the favorites will separate themselves.
Yeah, Jeff, it's like the same dudes who win this typically. So, any long shot you might be interested in, or are you with Pierce?
My conclusion was pretty much the same as Pierce. I mean, I brought up Eric Jones. He's plus 10,000. I don't really think he's going to win. I think he's just more of a good DFS value. But this is, again, one where you probably want to stay towards the top of the board. I'll throw out Chris Buescher. Interesting. He's raced well. He's 8th last week. He's got some decent short course results as well. I mean, again, like plus 2,800. I kind of agree with Pierce. Like, I don't know if you should go above like the Tyler Reddick range at plus 1,800. But if you were going to, that is probably where I would land on Chris Buescher. Again, I mean, I'm not expecting much, but he's the type of driver who could definitely get himself in position where if there was something crazy that happened at the end, he could take advantage. That's probably as high as I would go. But yeah, looking at the top of the board is probably where you should be spreading around your bets this week. If you want to sprinkle someone around, the plus 1600 range, fine. But it's a good week to take one of the top guys for sure.
All right, we'll get you guys out of here with this, at least Pierce. Your bet to win. Your bet to win in Richmond this weekend. Who's it going to be, Dietrich?
I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. Just came up short at Phoenix. I would love to go back to Kyle Larson, but his luck has just been terrible. And I guess the one week that I don't pick Larson, he'll finally turn it around. But I just can't ignore what Harvick did at Richmond last season, what he did a couple weeks ago in the first race in this new racing package. Stewart-Haas Racing has not been as good the last couple years, but the one place where they have been strong is at the short flat tracks. And I expect them to continue, at least Harvick, to continue that dominance.
Ulrich, who you got winning this weekend?
Look, I mean, I really like the odds on Chris. The bell tolls for these. Plus 750. We talk about sticking towards the top of the board. This is a driver who's finished sixth or better in 4 of his last 6 races. Loves short tracks. I think this is a really good spot for him. And I'm very fair with those odds. I think those are very good odds. I'm going to be jumping on it. Chris Bell, let's go for 2 in a row.
All right, we'll see how that shakes out. Pierce, you are free to go. Thank you so much. And now it is time to talk that hockey. So, Jeff, you got to stick around. Yeah,
That's
have to
right,
stay.
Jeff.
Okay, fine.
You were the only Canadian on that panel, so you have to stay and talk hockey now. I don't make the rules. That's just what it is. So, Eastern Conference, plenty of teams have locked up their spots. But in the West, ooh, man.
Yeah, that's right.
It is close. A lot of teams still
Spicy.
fighting it out. Yeah, it is
Look at
certainly.
these wild card standings.
Yeah,
You know who
Kraken,
you don't see there?
Jets.
The Oilers.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right.
Okay.
That's
well,
right.
You need
They've
to
won
relax.
7
okay?
of their last
You
8.
too.
But yeah, did you see that? Jets, currently hold just a 2-point edge over the Flames for that second wild card spot. And they're kind of floundering. 3 losses over their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you get the Flames with 3 of their last 4 contests that they've actually won. Although I think you know this more than anybody, consistency has been a huge problem for Calgary this season. So month to go in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, the
on
Flames
ice.
still only 2 points out of a wild card
Yes,
spot. So
for sure. So we got a
in it.
4-game slate tonight here, Ulrich. Your absolute favorite DFS play on said 4-game slate.
Look, massive games tonight for the Flames and the Jets, both in action. They're not playing each other, but they're both going to be on the ice. The Flames could potentially even tie the Jets out tonight. I'm going to go to the other side of that Flames game, though, to Vancouver. JT Miller, 6,500. Only for JT Miller tonight. The Flames goaltending has not been good. That's massive part of their problem this season has just been the inconsistency in net of Jakob Markstrom. Miller has been very, very consistent. He's playing over 22 minutes a night, 17 points in his last 10 games. His price for DFS just stays at this level. I'm expecting a ton of goals from this game. Vancouver's really opened up the offense under Rick Tocchet, averaging over 3.8 goals per game since he's taken over. Miller, like I said, huge catalyst for them in the top 6, power play option as well. You got to build around him. He's 6,500. Don't have a problem taking either side of this game. I think there's going to be goals, but JT Miller, the best overall play for me.
All right, what about the best overall value play in DFS?
Yeah, I mentioned I don't mind going to the other side of this game. I think Andrew Mangiapane is a very, very good value. On the other side, he's playing on their top line as well. You've got the Canucks who still defensively, they're just not it. A terrible penalty kill. As well, Thatcher Demko has been brutal. He just got smoked in his last outing. He's been brutal against the Flames over his career as well. Goal percentage well over .900, under .900, excuse me. So Flames have really eaten up Thatcher Demko. I expect them to really go full bore tonight at him. Andrew Mangiapane, again, only 4 points in his last 10 games, but he's shooting the puck more lately. He's got 12 shots on net over his last 4 games as well. He's playing on that top line, which is the biggest thing here. He's only 3,900. So Mangiapane, I really like. Alexei Lafreniere as well, 3,100. Another player you could look at, expecting a lot of goals from the Rangers and Sabres tonight too.
All right, tight on time, so we'll go with those 2 games that include the 2 teams battling for wild card position in the West. Best bet for Red Wings Jets, Jeff.
Red Wings Jets, this one's easy. I mean, I'm just sticking with my bread and butter here. That's the under on the Jets games. I mean, and I like the fact that not only are we going to take the under 6 goals, but they're playing the Red Wings. The Red Wings have been okay lately. And if you look at where the Red Wings have been trending, the under is 6-0 in the Red Wings' last 6 road games. So they've tended to play a tighter style while on the road. Red Wings also played last night. They're going to be on tired legs. I just don't see this developing into a shootout at all. Maybe the Jets explode and get to like 6 themselves, but I don't know. The Jets offense has been very hard to trust. The under in the last 50 home Jets games is 31 and 15-4. So, I mean, like the under has been trending big time for the Jets all season long. They've been a great under bet, and I like this here. I think it's going to be a closer game, lower scoring. Jets probably prevail, but, give me the under.
All right, well, the Flames hot on the heels of the Jets for that final playoff spot. So, Flames taking on the Canucks. Jeff, favorite bet in this one?
Yeah, I think this is the complete opposite game here. You've got 2 weaker goaltenders involved. You've got offenses on both sides, which have actually been very consistent. The Flames have been scoring too. I already mentioned the Canucks, but let's just take goal props on the guys I just mentioned. JT Miller at plus 200 for an anytime goal. That's great. I mean, again, this guy's playing a ton of minutes. He plays in all the top situations, going up against a weak goaltender in Jakob Markstrom. And then the other side, Andrew Mangiapane plus 255 for an anytime goal. Thatcher Demko, I just laid it out. I mean, the Canucks still allow a ton of shots on goal. Mangiapane getting a lot of opportunity. Flames going to be going full board tonight. I love anytime goals on both of those. Look, we hit one, we profit, but I could see a scenario where we get a 6-5 kind of game, both guys score. So give me goal props, JT Miller, Andrew Mangiapane.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Your job here is done. Our job here is done. Samir's job here is done. Howard and Drew.
Okay,
and
all right.
Matt's
Madden
job
is going to begin at noon. The slate is at 5.
Okay.
We will be back with more Sweat Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see
Yeah,
you then.
Masters Week next week, baby. Let's go.